Go the Distance, A Twisted Tale by Jen Calonita. Prologue. Some time ago. Excuses, excuses. You give the same ones every week. They're not excuses, Thea. It's the truth. Truth? You expect me to believe you leave this house every day and go to work? Their voices echoed through the small house, inevitably reaching 5-year-old Megara as she sat in the adjacent room at the window. She didn't flinch as their argument grew louder and more heated. As cutting as their words might be, Megara didn't understand them. Her parents' arguments had become as common as the sun rising in the morning and the moon shining at night. Even her mother seemed to anticipate them coming now, like she could feel an impending storm. As the sun began to fade each day, she'd move Megara to the home's only other room minutes before her father would walk in the door. "You wait here and play, Megara," her mother would say, sounding tired before the yelling even began. "Be a good girl now and keep quiet." Her mother usually placed the Stromvos in front of Megara to keep her busy. The top her father had once whittled her was the quietest of all of Megara's toys, though it had never been her favorite. That would be the Plataji, but the rattle was deemed too loud by her father, and the Spheria rolled all over the floor. One time her father had tripped over the marbles when he walked through the room and yelled so loud, Megara swore the walls rumbled. What she really wanted to play with was a doll with moving arms and legs, like the one she saw the girls in the market carrying. But somehow she knew not to ask for such an expensive gift. Most days her mother struggled to make enough from her mending to buy Megara milk. "Where did you spend the money you made, Leonatos?" "We need it for rent. Maya will be here any minute to collect." Megara rocked the Stromvos back and forth between her thumb and index finger. "I don't expect you to understand what it's like for me while you do nothing all day but sit here with her." "Her? You mean your daughter? The child who is your spitting image? The one you all but ignore while I mend and clean for others to feed her since you can't?" Megara gave her fingers a small twist and watched the top take off, spinning wildly across the windowsill, the colors in the wood melting into one. "It is hard enough to feed one mouth. You expect me to provide for 3 when there's no work in all of Athens?" "You mean none that you're willing to do, Leonatos. I see you when I bring Megara to the market. You stand around with those other louts all day laughing and doing nothing, while I fight to buy her milk." "Enough!" Her father's roar reminded her of that day with the Spheria, when he'd landed on his back after catching his foot on the marble. She momentarily looked at the door and held her breath, wondering if he would burst into the room and start yelling at her for doing absolutely nothing wrong, as he sometimes did. "I can't do this anymore, Thea. I never wanted this life." "Yet this is the life you have," her mother said sadly. "Rent is due today, and the food is all gone, and there is a child in that other room who needs us." "I have nothing to give her." His deep voice broke. "This is on you. Goodbye, Thea." Megara watched the top wobble as it neared the edge of the windowsill. If Megara didn't put her hand on to catch it, the Stromvos would fall off. "Don't you walk out that door!" Megara's mother shouted. "Leonatos!" The door to the other room opened and slammed shut. Her mother gave a strangled sob, then was quiet. The Stromvos wobbled for a moment more before it fell on the floor and skidded across the room, landing in front of the door. Megara turned to retrieve it, but the door opened first, sending the top back across the room and under a chair. "Megara, get your things." Her mother swept into the room, gathering blankets and clothes and shoveling them into a giant sack. Her pale face was tired, and her brown hair was pulled high above her head in a messy bun, held in by one of her sewing needles. "We're leaving, so move quickly." "Are we going to the market?" Megara asked hopefully. Her stomach growled as if to remind her how hungry she was. They'd had nothing but a roll to split the day before. The money her mother made mending clothes never made it to the end of the week. By the last day, Megara would be lucky if she had one meal to sustain her. Megara recalled the jug with coins being empty that morning when her mother had peeked inside to see what was left. "Maybe today your father will bring home some pay," she'd said hopefully. But Megara had said nothing. Father never came home with money. "We're moving," her mother said, not looking at her. "We need to get out of here before Maya comes to collect the rent. Rent we don't have because..." She exhaled hard. Your father causes nothing but pain. Pain. Is he sick? Megara asked, not understanding. Yes, sick of us, Thea mumbled under her breath, and then looked at her daughter. Her face softened, and she dropped the bag and knelt at Megara's side. Look at me, child. She held the bottom of Megara's chin with a single finger. Your father left us. Meg blinked, unsure what to make of this statement. Father went to work? This made her mother laugh, but the sound was bitter, like the taste of Kalamata olives. No. She looked at her straight in the eye. While Megara's deep red hair and pale skin resembled her father's, she shared her mother's unusual violet eyes. Their eyes were so magnetic a day didn't go by when someone in the street or at the market didn't comment on them. Today her mother's eyes looked as if they were on fire. No, your father is gone and isn't coming back. It's just you and me now. I need you to be strong. Gone. Megara blinked rapidly. He wasn't coming back. The way her mother was staring at her, Megara sensed this meant something that would change all she ever knew. Her eyes filled with tears. We will not cry, Megara. Her mother pushed a strand of Megara's hair behind her right ear. We are better off without him, you'll see. She held her chin high. Let this be a lesson, child. Don't ever let a man dim your light. In this world you can't count on anyone but yourself. Megara sniffed, but said nothing. There was banging at their door. Thea? Leonatos? It's Maya. Are you in there? Megara and her mother looked at one another. Her mother had put her hands to her lips. Grab what you can and go to the window. We're going. Window? Megara whispered. Their home was only one floor, so there was no need to worry about falling, but she'd never come and gone by window before. No door? No door. Her mother pushed her toward the window and opened it. There's no pleading with that woman, she said as she dropped their sack outside. You think she'll feel bad for us that Leonardo left? That we can't pay to stay here and she's placing a child on the street? No, all she'll see is lost rent money. Thea, I know you're in there. We will find somewhere else to stay, her mother told her as the banging grew louder. I promise. Megara looked around at the small home they had rented. The sparse furnishings, the tattered blanket on the bed that they all shared, the small table where her mother sat to do her mending, the fresh orchids in the vase, the one luxury Thea allowed herself. None of the possessions being left behind was their own. But there was something about the space she lived in for 5 years that Megara somehow sensed she'd have a hard time finding again. A true home. Their world wasn't much, but her father had robbed her of it. Her eyes caught sight of the forgotten Stromvos under a chair. That top was the one and only thing she recalled her father ever giving her. Instinctively, she went running back for it. Her hands closed around the top, just as she felt her mother's hands on her back. Megara, what are you doing? Thea hissed, pulling the child into her arms and lifting her up out of the window. The Stromvos slipped from her fingers as her mother dropped her over the side of the window. Megara could hear it hit the floor as it landed on the other side, but she knew not to ask her mother to retrieve it. Her father and the top were gone, and there was no use crying over them. Megara looked over to see her mother climbing out of the window behind her. Maya appeared in the window looking angry. You owe me your rent. Thea ignored Maya and reached for her daughter's hand. The two started to run. Thea! Megara could still hear Maya yelling from the window as they disappeared into the crowd at the end of the street. If there was one thing Megara had learned in her short life already, it was this. Love wasn't worth the trouble.